2, 1, you're on. Enjoy.
Hello, every episode of Life Unscripted. This is your host, Melody Garcia.
And this is Janie Lacey.
How are you, Janie?
I'm doing great.
We've had quite another exciting week ahead of us with a lot of preparations of things to come tonight.
We certainly do.
That I am so excited to bring. We were traveling to Africa today, girl.
Africa. Wow. We are just on a journey and an adventure this week. And today I am happy to be traveling to Africa today.
This is what happens when we have listeners and guests from around the world. So today's Life Unscripted, we travel to Kenya, Africa, and we have a true Wonder Woman in our midst. So I would like to go ahead and introduce to you none other than the lovely Amy. Amy is going to talk to us about the miracles of life. Amy is going to bring to us just an unbelievable freaking journey that truly unscripted her life. And without further ado, Amy, say hello from Kenya.
Hello. It's good evening here in Kenya. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much, Melody.
You're very welcome. And so, Janie, I wanted you to get in a few thoughts before we get started to really dive into asking Amy some of this questions that has got my heart singing all the way to heavens today.
Yes. Welcome to our Life Unscripted, Amy. You know, Life Unscripted just does that. You know, we like to unscript our life of limiting beliefs, perceived expectations that are conditioned by society, generations, culture, religion, and ourself that prevents us from being happy and free to live the best fulfilled life in all sectors. And people and individuals like yourself who are living passionately, but also are living sacrificially, are just heroes, are heroes in our world and just heroes to be able to learn from. And it is such an honor to know about you and to be introduced to you and to learn all that you're doing in Kenya. And I'm just so excited to hear your heart and your passion. But if you can start us off by just sharing a little bit about your background, where were you born, and just a little bit about your initial journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I was born in a small town called Somerset, Kentucky. I grew up there my whole life. I did all of my college in Kentucky. So before Kenya, I only lived in Kentucky. I traveled around quite a bit, but Kentucky was my only home before I moved here. Kentucky born and raised, and really, it's not too different. So,
and not too far from Florida.
Nope, not too far.
So then, with that being said, you know, we want to be able to let our viewers and our listeners know a little bit about you. And I'm just going to read some parts of your biography so that our viewers and listeners know a little bit about you, Amy. So Amy is a U.S. Certified physician assistant and a CEO and founder at OVI Children's Hospital, a 24/7 medical facility offering free life-saving treatment to critically ill, orphans, and abandoned children across sub-Saharan Africa. She currently serves full-time in Kenya with her husband and co-founder Rob and their 2 children, Moses and Lily. Apart from her time in Kenya, Amy has traveled to nearly 40 countries to serve, share, and simply indulge in the diversity of culture and experience. Amy is a pediatric oncology enthusiast, orphan advocate, and global visionary with a passion for helping others achieve their largest goals. Above all else, Amy is committed to investing in the lives of the orphaned and destitute to offer the hope of health, love, and purpose to children who would otherwise have no access to care. And it's just amazing to learn, Amy, that you are not even over 25.
Yeah, just very.
to accomplish so much is just an honor to hear that, and to also just learn about all the things that you're doing. So just really looking forward to the conversation. And I know Melanie has so much that she wants to dive into. So I'm going to bounce it back over to Melanie so that we can start on our journey to Kenya.
All right, so Amy, I just wanted to first of all say that thank you so much for taking your busy time out of a very, I'm sure, tiring day. But again, to Janie's point, you know, it's not every day we find a 25-year-old who has their own hospital saving hundreds of children's life. So I want to take you back, as Amy and I have met each other at the CEO cruise early of 2017, when I keynoted as one of the keynote speakers, and really just fell in love with Amy's soul and stories. I wanted to really let the listeners know, so this segment is about defying what is impossible. So Amy, take us back to your journey when you first had the inclination to even build this hospital.
Yes, absolutely. And I just speaking to what you've said, like just being so young, I always like to point out, like, it's nothing special about me. Like, I just think that truly God chose me at this age and with this much inexperience just so he could get all the glory. And I'm grateful for that. But originally my calling to Africa, it was as simple as reaching in a hat, really. I had really just done my whole life. I'd done pageants, but I was pretty insecure. I knew I was okay at public speaking. Everyone encouraged me to go into broadcasting. I didn't really know what else I could do. That's what I was always told I was good at. I was told I was beautiful. I was told I was well-spoken, and I should pursue that lifestyle. So there I was, and one day I was at a leadership conference, just a side job for college to make some money, and I was playing an icebreaker game. I reached into a hat and I drew out a question that said, if you could have any life, what would it be and why? And, you know, pageant girl Amy perked right up and was like, you know, if I could have any life, I would just love to bring life-saving treatment to vulnerable children all over the world. I've just seen Operation Smile and all these wonderful missionaries who go and literally give life. And I just think that would be an honor and just the best calling I could ever have. So long story short, someone heard me saying this, announced it in front of 2,000 people at this conference, and then really the conviction kicks in. So I have all these people coming up to me and congratulating me for this life that I wasn't living. And I over and over, oh no, that's not me. You know, that's not my life. It was just an icebreaker question, if I could do anything. And one person, I can't remember his face, I can't remember his name or anything about him, but it's the profound statement that changed my life. And he asked me, if that's the life you want to live, then why are you not living it? And I just broke down. I walked away and I was like, God, you know, I thought I had my life figured out. You know, I'm in love with my boyfriend. I have a brand new puppy. I just got into this program that's so competitive at my school. Do you really want me to drop everything? And I just felt this overwhelming burning sensation over my body that I could not pursue anything else. So what that looked like for me at the time was a Google search. I literally Googled medical opportunities in Africa. I said, what is this life that I'm being called to? I dropped out of my major at the time and I picked up a pre-med major my junior year of college. So here I am, almost done with all of my prerequisites, and I'm going to start it all over again. So I did. It was an absolute struggle. I was a 4.0 student my whole life, a perfectionist, and you know, signing up for honors chemistry, honors molecular biology, and all these different complicated classes. I had no idea that I could ever fail or be unsuccessful, but I was. Satan was really attacking me and my worth. And because of that, I just kept saying, I have to see this in person. I have to know if this is what God's calling me to. So from that Google search, I went on my very first journey to Kenya. I had no money. I had no support. I remember I told my parents at the Thanksgiving table, I know you want me to do this, and that's why I already bought my plane ticket. So I'm headed out in a week. I'm going to be in Kenya for 6 weeks. And they were shocked and they were floored. And but I knew with all my heart it's what I needed to do. And from the day I landed there, I met a Kenyan at the airport. He said, "Are you Amy?" I got in the car and God protected me. So finally I got there. I started working as a surgical assistant at a small mission hospital. And while I was there, started stepping into the children's ward a little bit, and my heart just broke. I was seeing these children who had families but were very impoverished and weren't able to access care. There was a child being detained because they couldn't pay their bill. The parents were going to have to leave and go work at the farm and come back. And I was just like, wow, the devastation is unreal. But even more than that, God just put it so audibly in my mind. He just said, imagine my children who have no one, go and find them. And here I am in Africa, so I know that God is probably telling me orphanages. What is an orphanage? I don't really know. I've sponsored some ministries at this time, but I've never stepped foot in an orphanage. So God is really just, in so many ways at this time in my life, asking me to do things I've never done and that I knew nothing about. So I marched into my first orphanage. I started seeing these situations. God just put child after child after child in front of me. I saw children seizing febrile seizures that went into something so severe. Could have been treated by Tylenol, but there's no Tylenol. These remote orphanages where there's no budget at all, no matter how life-threatening or how acute the situation is, there's absolutely nothing that they can do. And time after time, I saw infants dying before they even had time to issue them a birth certificate, because their mothers would die in labor, and then they would be thrown into these institutions that were too crowded and didn't have the resources to take care of them. And so from that moment, God just gave me this picture in my mind. He gave me a physical building in my mind that was so clear I had to draw it on notebook paper. So I got out that notebook paper and I drew that medical home and hospital for terminally and chronically ill orphans. And from there, it's really history. That notebook paper, one day I got engaged to my best friend of 11 years. We went to Africa together, and he said, "You need to turn that vision, that notebook paper, into a blueprint. We need to make this something that we can pursue." And so I did. He paid for me. It was a little gift to get this blueprint, and it became kind of the tangible goal. So here I am, 20 years old, then flash forward to being engaged at 23 years old, all happening pretty quickly. End up going to PA school because my sense of urgency, every time I went to Kenya, I knew sooner and sooner and sooner I wanted to be there. So I found a wonderful profession where I could still specialize in pediatric oncology, but took significantly less time. I didn't want to be 40 going over there. I wanted to be going over there now. And so really just blasted through college, through PA school. By the grace of God, got through everything with somehow flying colors. And one day, before I had even graduated, I was here. I was just building a playground. It was the very first thing I ever did here. As an organization, I founded OV. And the playground, just somewhere safe for the kids to play, was the only project. I had a horrible time fundraising. I was even selling coffee. I wasn't asking for donations. I was selling little personalized bags of coffee, and I didn't sell any, and my dad felt so bad for me. I remember he sold his old Buick that he'd been driving. We called it the Screaming Monkey, and he sold it and had no car for that whole month just so that my project wasn't a failure. All of that just to say I was not going into this with a ton of confidence. But, I went, I built this playground, and on one of the last days I was building it, I went to go get wood, and I met this motorcycle driver. And he insisted that God was telling him that I needed to go to his orphanage. And right then and there, I fast forward, went to this orphanage reluctantly. It was my last day in the country, but he was so persistent, but I went. I saw just a revelation of things, including my daughter, my now daughter at this orphanage. I had been having recurring dreams of Lily. I knew her name was going to be the name of a flower. And so finding her, I remember praying to God. I said, God, why would you show me this child now? Like, I know you have this child for me, but I'm not going to be here for another 10 or 15 years. I have to work and save all this money. Why now? And right after I prayed that prayer, not even 5 minutes, we're driving back from the orphanage to our home, getting ready to put our suitcases on the plane. And lo and behold, there's the building, every detail that I drew standing before my eyes. So right then and there, I had no money. We had $200 left over after the playground project. I had nothing but student loans and credit card debt. Rob and I had just got married. We've been married 4 months. So he had just finished school too. So we had no reason to pursue this. It was a large investment. But I just knew from the moment I saw it, and Rob agreed, it was just too much to deny that God was saying now. So we got into a contract with lawyers. We pursued this building. We had a lot of trouble. Of course, I can see why now, looking back, someone who's 22 years old asking you to fund a hospital when they have no medical degree yet, they have no money in the bank, and over they'd be like, why you? Like, why not any other organization? And what happens if you don't raise the money? And I said, I know. Somehow I will raise this money, but even if I don't, whatever I have, we will start on dirt floors, because God is telling me that these children are waiting.
Wow, Amy. I am just in such awe of hearing your journey of faith, of vision, of perseverance, and walking in places of risk, but yet seeing what God has led you and placed in your heart, because you said in your heart you knew you needed to do it, even though it wasn't clear for you the steps that were laid out, which is why I hear the faith walk in your story. Could you share with us, because we can all have that vision and that faith to do what we know God has laid on our heart to do, but you mentioned a couple of key points. In Life Unscripted, we know life is unscripted, and that it's in our journey that we learn our greatest lessons. So when you think about the struggle and the trouble in particular of getting to where you are now, could you speak a little bit more about how you you're looking back now, how are you able to keep one foot in front of the other and keep walking towards your vision, even though there was trouble, there was struggle, and there were probably obstacles put in your way? What kept you going?
Yeah, absolutely. So all I can say is I was going, but I was down. I was dragging myself by my fingertips. So not to say that I had this perfect faith, but I was willing to persevere through the actual misery. There was turmoil. There was so much. You wouldn't believe, when I was pursuing a life for myself, when I was pursuing an acting career, a modeling career, everyone supported me. Everyone felt like that was God's calling on my life. And here I turn around, I want to help these sick children, and all of a sudden it's just this attack. And I pressed forward, but only by the grace of God. And I'm proud of that. He would always show up at just the right time. Sometimes not the deadline, sometimes a little bit after, but when I think the hardest thing, I was a newlywed. Like I said, I was only 4 months married whenever I first found this building and had to start fundraising, pursuing it. I cried every day, but I gave it to God every day too. And at the end of that, it ended up with a check for $300,000 from a stranger that funded the entire hospital, every cent of my legal bills to the penny. And when you get a miracle like that, when heaven literally opens up and drops your dream tangibly on the ground, lets you buy it, you learn that nothing is impossible with God. And I think that my naivety was actually an advantage. I didn't have a business management degree, any experience in nonprofits, no reason for God to call me to this, but because of that, anytime I was met with a disgusting word, I was able to say, yes, absolutely, because this has nothing to do with me and everything to do with the fact that God is using me to show that he did it. There's no way I did it. You're absolutely right. But look who did. And, and that's Jesus. And that is how miracles happen.
Well, Amy, $300,000 from an anonymous sponsor is a huge miracle. You mentioned a few things. First of all, I find it really interesting that when you were pursuing modeling, pageant, anything that would put your beautiful face to the world, people were so supportive. And yet you met the biggest challenges in trying to help humanity, in a different country. I know you and I had this discussion that in your own way face internal discrimination because people were basically questioning, why in the world are you opening a hospital in Kenya and not in the United States? That there were some fundraisers you went to that you really ended up, going home in tears because of the fact that, that we were let me just pause here, Amy, and we're going to pick up recording because we lost Karina.
Sure.
Hold on.
Oh.
Who's our tech producer? We are all on. And we'll edit that out. Okay, so I'm going to count this down. 3, 2, 1. Karina, if you could remove that part, we're going to pick it up from this sentence. So as I was saying, Amy, you found yourself in a situation where in support of modeling, in support of pageant places, you had a lot of folks cheering you on. And yet in support of humanitarian movement and building this hospital and helping children in Africa, you basically did not find any support, to the point that you and I had those past conversations that in trying to fundraise now for the hospital, in trying to find sponsors for the hospital, you're actually met with some other type of discrimination, which was why build a hospital in Africa and not the United States? And that, there's a stark reality of what truly, it's interesting that people would stay away from the humanitarian aspects of different situations, but have no problem in those things that, that appeases them temporarily. So talk to me about that story of what you really went through, because I want to, this is part of Life Unscripted. This is why we call it Unscripting Limiting Beliefs, which you've already shown in the anonymous, donation that had happened for $300,000. But let's, I also talk about the 1-to-1 principle from Stage, which is if you put God first and service to humanity second, he will always, always put you first. So with that said, tell me about some of the challenges that you face, coming from even within those same people that tried to support you in modeling, and the absence of their presence when you were now trying to raise this for the hospital.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was even just a matter of having the confidence in my calling, because people had really good arguments. I even remember, for the most part, it's common for people when you're coming and offering a free service to them, that they would champion behind you, and they did. But I remember even one instance here in Kenya, someone still looked at me and said, why don't you go home and model and send all the money over here to help the children? And I really didn't have an answer for that at the time. I was 20 years old, but it was before the building or anything happened. But somehow I knew, I had I did have opportunities in modeling and in acting. I know my claim to fame is I had an audition for Mystique. We all know who got that, and Jennifer Lawrence. But just thinking of how different my path could have been, just if I had taken that audition, or if I had, well, Lord knows that world needed Jennifer Lawrence, so I'm glad for that. But yeah, I mean, just so many things, even here. And it's hard to talk about what happened in the United States even more than what happened here, because it came from painful places. It came from the places that I trusted, from the places that I grew up my whole life thinking would support me in anything. And that was my church. Those were Christian conferences. And those are the things that stick out in my mind. I don't remember being discouraged by many non-believers. It was actually within these people that I really admired. And for sure, this is where God's going to do it. This is where I'm going to get everything. I just had so much faith in this organization, and they literally, as I walked in, laughed. Remember, I've driven for about 6 hours to get to this meeting, and they laugh at me and they say, "We just wanted to see the face of the 22-year-old, 23-year-old, whatever I was at the time, who would have the audacity to ask us for money for children in Africa. Don't you know that we serve the greater area of not mentioned city?" And my heart broke. I actually sat there and
Amy,
yes.
we had lost you just for a few seconds, about 30 seconds before you had picked back up and said that your heart broke. Could you just repeat a little bit of what you were sharing so that we can make sure that we got it all? If you can repeat.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. In my heart just broke in that moment, because he said, "This is not our mission statement." And I remember looking at him and saying, these children are in no one's mission statement. You are speaking from your experiences, but I am speaking with 500 little faces in my mind who I know need me. I am a citizen of this state as much as you are. I love my Kentucky home. I've served in Eastern Kentucky. I have Harlan County roots. It doesn't get much poorer than those Eastern Kentucky areas in the United States, but it did not compare to what God was showing me in Africa. If there was something equivalent, it was not revealed to me, and the faces that were being shown at that time, I had to chase that. And I had to learn, you cannot compromise your calling for someone else's calling or someone else's opinion. So I walked out of that meeting broken. It was extremely hard. And that was one of the first trials that I had. But even after obtaining the building, I remember I was in Houston. I was minding my own business. I was walking from booth to booth, and someone asked me what the logo on my shirt meant. And I told them about our children's hospital that we were starting. And this man, he was wearing a big ichthus on his shirt. He had a cross on the banner on his table, and he looked at me in the eye and said, "How dare you? How dare you think that you can do something so much better than what already exists? Don't you know how many missionaries have gone before you?" And I just said, "Yes, sir, I have, but I've been to over 40 countries trying to challenge this calling, and God has still told me, go there, go to Migori, Kenya, and so I have to be obedient." And he just looked at me and just told me how unwise I was and how I should really think about the mistake I was making. And he's like, and then follows up with, "But can I pray for you?" And without a response, just starts praying over me, lays a hand on me. A very, painful prayer, but I just walked away in tears. And God put a single concept over my mind. And it was, and the blood of how many orphans would be on your hands if you didn't have the courage to walk away from him, And from that point forward, I was really inspired to just encourage other missionaries, not to just and entrepreneurs or dreamers of any kind, because there aren't a lot of people who are going to say that you can do it when it, and if someone says you can do it, I always question if it's from God, because God is not going to show up in a place where everyone expects you to succeed already. If someone thinks you're going to fail, now I know that that's a pretty good sign that you should pursue it, that you should not just pursue it, but run after it confidently, knowing that if it's bigger than you and if it's impossible, it is way more likely to happen.
Wow, Amy, there are just so many golden nuggets that you have shared with us. And some of them that stand out to me is you cannot compromise your calling for someone else's. And in that, finding your obedience. And then you also said something that just stood out to me, that you were inspired, so then you are inspiring. And there's just so much that we can just learn from that. And on top of that is learning to question, is it really from God? And when you get that message and that answer clearly, to run after it with confidence. You know, I am just in awe of your wisdom. I mean, we're just hearing such wisdom from you that I'm getting inspired and just getting goosebumps just hearing your journey and your story. You know, so as you are walking to today, you know, I'm trying to imagine Amy today. So you have this hospital, you're doing the things that God has visioned you to do. You have your husband and you are doing the work. You are boots to the ground. You're doing the nitty gritty. You're doing the stuff that other people will potentially just dream about. But you also understand that it takes courage, you know, and in that you're going to have struggle. You're going to have challenges. And you had mentioned about at times feeling miserable in that, and still persevering because you knew that it was God's mission for your life. So what is it for you, Amy, that the day-to-day that you're doing the work, your hands are dirty, you are coming up against opposition, and with children, obviously, they need advocates, they need people who can stand in the gap for them. What is it that keeps you going on a day-to-day basis? So if we were watching Amy's life, like where would we see? Yes, your strength is from the Lord, but when we see the practicality, your day-to-day fight, what is that? What would we see? What can we learn from that?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's one word, and that is children. I didn't know this about myself even when I was volunteering here, or any time at home. You know, I didn't babysit or do anything growing up when I had this calling, but what I've found is these children are literally my battery pack. I don't know, you could call it a motherly instinct, but literally the more children I have here, the more supernatural energy I have. I remember growing up my whole life, I was tired. Even as a kid, I was very depressed. I was very tired. I had a terminally ill parent. I went through so many trials. I was in a car accident and I broke my neck, and I was bedbound, and all these painful things, all these trials that I went through. I get to see a revelation today why they happened. So when I look at that child who's in bed, who can't feed themselves, who can't shower themselves, I remember what it was like to be 18 years old, fully competent in my mind, and having to have someone feed me and bathe me and take care of me. And I see children with cancer, and I see these things that broke me my entire life being used for God's glory. All this pain is being redeemed. And just having these children, I can't even explain it, but I wake up in the morning and I'm energized. I'm up at night and I don't want to just lay in my bed and watch Netflix. Like, I want to go downstairs and tuck them in. I want to sing songs with them. I want to see how they're doing. And it just gives me such a joyful sense of self that I never had. The insecurities that I had, the discomforts that I had, the anxiety and the depression and all these things, it's been, it has been redeemed, and it's been used in a way that I've learned to love my flaws, things that I fought my entire life. something I named anxiety, I now call empathy. I am worried that the kids' shoes are too tight, or that someone will fall off the bed, or that they don't feel loved. But those things aren't just worry. They aren't things that I just need to numb. They're the Holy Spirit actively telling me how I can reach children and how I can reach people. And it's just been a beautiful process. It hasn't been perfect. I cannot tell you the number of spiritual attacks here, and they're scary. They aren't simple. It's people wanting to close your hospital or put you in jail, or these crazy things. There's corruption everywhere, but just seeing God come through and knowing that I don't want anyone else's life. Like, I don't look back and wish I'd taken that acting audition. I don't look back and wish that I had just pursued modeling. And I don't look at celebrities anymore and want their life, or anybody and want their life, because I am so just confident in the children that God has given me. Sometimes I'll just look at one child, like Winnie. It was the first child I ever administered chemotherapy for. A 10-inch tumor from her eye. She was completely terminal, stage 4. And I was told to do nothing at all. And I just remember going home that night and laying hands on her head and just saying, God, if you can make it fall off, just make it fall off. Please, God, make it fall off. And within 3 weeks of chemotherapy, the tumor literally fell off. It disintegrated. It was gone. And just seeing that. And now Winnie even, she decided she didn't want to be a patient. So she just walked up to the 5th floor where I live and moved into my apartment, brought her bed. And she's like a child to me now. She's, mommy, mommy, mommy. And I look and I say, I could have missed this. I could have listened to anything. But even if it were just Winnie, even if it were just that one infant that we rescued from absolute abandonment and destitute, even if it were just one of these children, like, it would be worth it. It would be worth every single trial I went through. And that's what fills me up every day.
Amy, you are a modern day Esther in my books. And you're a representative of what hope looks like, and a representative really of a modern day miracle worker. Some of us tend to think that these things do not exist, because when we look at the Bible, there is a tendency to look at it as the same way as a history book, that those things had happened in the past. Mm-hmm. But here you are, a living, breathing soul, saying that, look at my life journey of my own stories of depression from breakdown to breakthrough, of not following the masses, of the golden nuggets that you have truly shared, and saying, I am not going to let my destiny be stopped by the opinions of others of what I should become, when you feel that there's an internal calling. So thank you, first of all, for heeding that call, for sharing the stories of Winnie, and and even enlightening us with the fact that there are such things as spiritual attacks that still happens to this day, and that the enemy uses that to completely derail you from the higher calling. But what I believe is what's really beautiful about your journey, Amy, that you may or may have already realized, or may not have realized at this point, is that when you are healing those children, and you and Rob are doing what you need to do as physicians, as medical experts in your field, is that in that healing touch is hope for humanity. In that healing touch is that you are planting legacy seeds forward. And it's a beautiful hospital, first of all. So looking at the pictures, and you look at the stark difference of what's going on around the gates or outside the gates of the hospital, is that OV, and for some reason I keep calling it OVI, so I apologize for that. But
it's the accent, and it's fine.
Yeah, it's like OVI, but
we call it both. I call it both too. Yes.
But in all of that, the hospital actually stands as a very foundation of defying what has been impossible. So tell me the story, or tell us the story of why the hospital was named OVI. What does that mean?
Absolutely. So the first word is also the acronym. So OVI and Violet International. OVI was my nephew Ovidio. He only lived to be 3 years old. He had a very tragic death, but he was also an orphan. My sister was in the process of adopting him, and he was just the perfect legacy for these children. You know, we want to go into this not as outcome based. We want to go into this giving every child a chance to fight, and not just even a chance to fight, but a chance to be empowered and a chance to know Jesus before they pass away. That's not something that's common here in Africa. Resources are limited, and so a lot of times children and people do get turned away from medical care because of their outlook, maybe because they're dying. And we wanted to just use OV as a power word of, we are going to try, and we are going to love you for whatever life you have. And Violet stood for, it's symbolic. It's not a name, but it's, in biblical times, people would bring violets to the sick and to funerals as a promise of peace in the afterlife. And we do deal with chronically ill children. We have some good outcomes, but we do a lot of palliative care. And so just speaking that over people, aspirin is actually derived from violets, so relieving their pain. It's just a very symbolic word for what we wanted to represent in this hospital.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because that shows every day when you look at that name, it's so personal to who you are and your heart and your family and your legacy and honoring children. Because we are in such a time where we need more ambassadors, and we need more workers, and we need more people who really see the bigger vision and the bigger picture. Because I'm just still so just in awe, just kind of listening to your story, and just coming from the pageant space, coming from Kentucky, and now being in Africa, and just doing all the things that God had laid for you and visioned your life to be. To be, and you walking that out each day. And you know, I am a licensed psychotherapist by trade, Amy. So there are certain things that you say that just stand out to me that I like to reiterate, because I want our listeners and our listeners to hear and to learn from your journey. And one of the things that you had mentioned was, you said that you learned to love your flaws, and you looked at like anxiety and those types of things, and you reframed them in a way that you can put that energy to really being helpful and not harmful to yourself. So, you know, again, just such a person of wisdom, and just so in awe of all these lessons that you are teaching us from your own journey, because that's what we are about.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just saying, it's so much of my story, because I love to tell people that, because I've met so many other people with anxiety, you know, who shut down and don't follow their dreams because of it. And what was liberating for me is like, okay, you know, if I wanted to be the happiest girl in the world, if that was my goal, if I was just so happy, how would I have walked into such a pitiful and pathetic environment? How could I watch children die? How could I go out and even have the emotional capacity to handle it? And for me, I'd been sad my whole life. I dealt with that. And so, you know, I thought I'd just be redirecting that sadness to something that's worth being sad about. But instead, it has somehow healed me in a way. I mean, you know, there's things I'll always struggle with, but like my anxiety and my depression, it's nothing. It's nothing like it was, because it is serving me as much as it ever harmed me. It's serving me so much more now. I
appreciate you so much for saying that, Amy, because you are speaking truth, and truth is that every single person is always going to struggle with something. And what you've just shared with us is just a matter of your self-awareness. Are you aware of it? And then how do you channel that energy to keep yourself moving forward and the things that God has for you and the things that he's visioned for you and the things that he's put you into the mission field to do. So to be able to be so raw and honest and vulnerable and sharing that, because, you know, anxiety could be a very powerful thing, and it can keep people stuck, to your point, where they don't fulfill their dreams, or they can use that fuel to move them forward and channel that energy to do all the things that God has for them. So I appreciate you sharing that, because what you're telling us is that we can all have our vision and our dreams, and we don't have to get frozen as a result of our fears or a result of our worries, because we cannot predict what the future is going to hold. But if we are looking at the vision that God has for our future and we're walking in that obedience, that we know that we can trust, our trust is in the Lord. So that is just, again, just so much golden nuggets that you have, that you're sharing with us. And the most important thing that I also heard you say, and I'm just going to put it in my words, because it's something that I like to share with my clients, and I think you can appreciate this, is that courage builds action. So by you listening to the vision and being obedient to God, and you taking the steps, even though there were times of misery, there was times of confrontation from locals, even though there was so much stuff that you were going through, every step that you had kept you fueling forward and to build the courage to move. And then you looking at the children and knowing and understanding everything that you are doing keeps that fuel in the fire, you know. And then from a global perspective, what would be some of the advice that you would give others that have that fuel in them and that want to pursue impact on a global scale, but they perhaps are frozen by whether it's anxiety, whether it's fear, whether it's lack of resources, lack of family support, all the things that you shared with us? What would be that one thing when you look back and you would say that if you had to narrow your vision and you had to focus on this to get you to the next step, that was the thing that got you through every step that you took to get you to where you are now?
I would just say any failure that you have along the way is never going to be equivalent to regret of never trying. There's just so much that comes from trying, so much that builds yourself. And I really believe that when you go forward with courage, if it aligns with scripture, which I was confident my calling did, you know, God did ask us to pursue the widows and the orphan and the desperate. And if it lines up with scripture, it's really not something you have to sit and pray about for 25 years. God is telling you to go. He doesn't feel like he has to scream it over you. He has given you the answer just in the Bible. I like to encourage people, not everyone, and I will even say not most people, wake up with an international calling. If you do, trust that it's from God. It is just very it is very easy to feel like, oh, this is just far-fetched and this is too much. It could never be me, but it could be you. And if you have the desire, I can almost guarantee it is you.
Thank you for that, Amy. So I want folks to know, you know, you had shared a lot of wisdoms here, but I also want to see and show the human side of what these children are truly going through. So if you don't mind sharing one experience, if you could, what has been the most painful experience for you personally in the challenges that you face with these kids over there in Kenya?
Sure. There's been multiple, but sometimes it's just when it is late in the game, when you don't get the happy ending. I just had a 8-month-old who came to me. He was less than 8 pounds. He'd been suffering in the village. He had no one to take care of him. And they brought him to me on his last days of life. And it's just such a fight and such a struggle that you wouldn't things I wouldn't have even imagined. The fact that children just like this child that I'm talking about now, you can make a phone call, you can try to go and rescue that child, and there's even points where you'll be exploited. Someone will say, no, send me money for transport, or we need payment to bring you these patients. Just wild, wild, wild things. And sometimes the devil is so real that these children die because we can't access them in time, or because we need more hands, or we need more resources to be able to go and get these children. And that is hard. It's hard, but getting to be there in a child's final moments and getting to hold them, even if it's only for 2 days, getting to hold them and love them and fight for them, to use a defibrillator, or to try any end-of-life measures that they know that they couldn't have got anywhere else, even when the outcome is horrible and sad. Getting to find these children that no one wants, that people have spit on, that people have locked in rooms, that people have hidden because they're ashamed of their conditions, getting to bring them into a life that is bright and full of joy and full of healing for any period of time, is what makes me keep doing that and keep moving forward.
You had a post on Facebook, I think a couple of days ago, that really touched my heart. As people are still trying to find meaning, and so sometimes we hear the excuses of I'm just tired or I'm exhausted. One of the posts that really resonated with me was you pouring your heart out on, it's been such a long day, right? Because you're up at the crack of dawn, you're going to bed late at night. Mm-hmm. You have you said 50, that's 50 patients in the hospital right now.
Yes.
And about 40 in staff, which 20 are volunteers and 20 are sponsored. Am I correct? So again, your day. Go ahead.
Oh yes, so everyone is on payroll now.
Oh, congratulations.
The staff are on payroll. Yes, it's exciting. Except for me and Rob. Me and Rob are still caring, but everyone else, all the Kenyans are paid now.
So you have a full staff of 40 at this point. I believe you also started a nursing certification. I know at one point you posted about that, and we'll touch that in a minute. But the post that I'm referring to is you pouring your heart out and just exhausted you were physically, like just bone hurting type of day, that it was just, a full day, literally and a half of just nonstop healing and saving lives. And that just when you thought the day that you could at least call it a night to rest, someone else drops another baby at the gates of OV hospital, and that you found renewed strength when you saw this little infant whose life was basically, again, needed saving. Is that those are the challenges that people don't often see or hear about. And or the pictures that you have posted where I think you went to someone's home in search of this little child, because you heard about that. And yes. Kenya's not Disneyland. Kenya's not Disney World. And the risks that you and your staff and Rob takes to even go outside the gates, the parameters of the hospital, needs a lot of prayer and coverage. Is that this is the reality of the other side of the world. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. And we do it every week. Every week we're going out and finding these children. We've just found that, part of what makes them so vulnerable is they have no one to bring them to you. So just going out and taking those risks, and, the car sickness and these dirt roads and, all of it, it's worth it. And I do it week after week after week after week, because when you see someone go from death to life, when you see a little child who looks like a skeleton just become a chubby, happy baby, there's nothing more empowering or more energizing than that.
Amy, I believe when we do get to those moments of exhaustion and You know, we know we're moving in our passion. We know we are serving and we're doing all the things that we believe we are born and we are on this earth to do. That there are times where we have to take care of ourselves in order to be able to be of the greatest need to those that we are serving. So I'm a big believer, and even in all of our missions, that self-care has to be a part of that. And you are a woman of faith, so we know that part of your self-care is your spirituality and your relationship with our Lord. But what else, you know, so I'm looking at Amy and I'm seeing this 25-year-old who is full of wisdom and she's full of passion, and she is a role model for us and what it looks like to do all the things that we've talked about. So on just the practical side and the human side of Amy, what does Amy do to take care of Amy? What does that look like in the midst of all the stuff that you have that can burden your heart every day, from children having shoes to being able to not be able to save some of the children that come to you from some of the villages, and all that stuff that happens on a day-to-day basis? What do you do to take care of yourself and to renew yourself so that you are fully strengthened physically, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally?
Yeah, and it's a new art to me, definitely. I've been overworked my whole life. I don't think I slept in all of college, literally. I think I've had, more hours awake than most 80-year-olds. I was nonstop, but I've learned this new art of delegation, and it's been beautiful. Not just because of not just because of the rest I get, but because of getting to see other people do those same jobs and do them just as well. It's pride that makes us want to do it all ourselves. I'm the only person who can see these patients. I'm the only person who can promote this. I'm the only person who can fundraise. And so I did that. I literally did that for so long. I was just the face of OV. I didn't even let my husband do any of the work. And so I have this full team of Kenyans who are fully capable.
Amy, you went out for a minute, but hello, Amy?
Hi.
Amy?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Yeah, you went out there for a minute, so I just wanted to have you repeat what you said. I heard you say that you were mentioning something about your husband, and we had missed that part, so I just wanted you to repeat that so we can make sure we got it.
Yeah, I just, where OV had been my vision for so long, I found it before I was dating anyone or married, and I did it alone. I planned the hospital alone. I single-handedly was paying the bills every month and doing all these things at a distance. And I was just saying, I literally never slept. All I did, I would live in the US by day, and I'd live virtually in Kenya by night. And then God just gave me grace by teaching me the art of delegation, and what that can do for you. So I've learned taking the time to teach someone else how to do what you're doing is, it can be a scary thing. It's a control thing. It's a pride thing. But when you can empower someone to do it, that's how you find rest. It took me taking away that dependence, taking away that pride that I had to be a hand in everything. I was encouraged to start an ambassadorship program. Now I have over 200 ambassadors. I have 12 interns. I have an assistant. All of them are helping me voluntarily. The ones who are paid are raising their own salaries back in the US. And they're doing a great job. They're doing even a better job at a lot of the tasks because I can't do it all. I can't be the expert in everything, and I shouldn't be. It's robbing other people of their potential when I try to do everything. And so I will just, sometimes if someone knocks on the door, I'll send them to someone else who's equally competent, and learning how to do that and how to let go of that anxiety and how to empower others has allowed me to enjoy my children, to enjoy a good meal or a good movie or a good nap when I need it.
Okay, so self-care for Amy and the power and art of delegation is something that you are starting to master or learning to master, right?
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, you are very much needed. There's a saying that goes that what when mama, what is it? When basically the mom is not functioning, every operation goes down with mom, right? And so this transitions
Yeah.
me to first of all congratulate you with Lily, your daughter. So congratulations on adopting, Lily. I've seen beautiful pictures of both of you. But I want to bring light as we come to the close of this segment to what is up and coming here in Orlando, Florida. We are going to have a chance to meet Amy in person. I know Amy personally, but I can't wait to introduce Amy in person for the rest of the world. So if you don't mind, Amy, talking about this upcoming, we're just excited about your Global Impact Summit that is happening here in October.
Yes. Thank you so much, Melody. I'm glad you mentioned that. I just, so much of my passion has become inspiring others. And I know that's so cliched, but truly, this Global Impact Conference, if maybe this hospital sounds like nothing you would ever want to do, you could never be around dying children, blood makes you pass out, that's okay. I'm not going to host this conference to make another army of minions. What I want to do is I want to hear your dream. I want to connect you with the leaders in those areas. We have people coming from education, from corporate America. We have people coming from absolutely everywhere. And my goal is to help people make their impact happen. Not just further mine, but to see people doing 100 times greater things than what I'm doing. If I keep it to myself, or even if I just call people to myself, I can only impact this small corner of the world. But I really believe speaking into people, connecting people, giving them the opportunity to network with all these people that I wish I had known 5-6 years ago, is just the best gift I could give to not only them, but to the world. So that's my hope for this conference, that just like me, I was at a conference when I drew that paper out of a hat. So I believe it's time for the cycle to restart, and for me to give that moment to someone else.
So for the next 2 days, this is on October 26th and 27th, next month, you're going to have a Global Impact Summit. And, again, it's different, not because it's just about awareness of OV, International Children's Hospital, that it has everything to do with alignment and bringing people together to impact and empower. So Amy, how do we find information about the summit? I know I'm very honored as one of her keynote speakers for this event, but I wanted the world to know, if they are interested in attending this event, how do they get access to this event? Where do they find it? And the last thing I have for you before Janie closes us out after that information is, what are your immediate needs and how can we help you?
Sure. So for finding the Global Impact Conference, our website, OV, and then the word international.org. You'll find it everywhere, all over the website. Our Facebook page, OV Children's Hospital, and then just as simple as Global Impact Conference. There's a Facebook event, still very small. We just started the event, so when you see the RSVPs, don't freak out. It's going to be great. It's going to be attended, but yeah, the website is the place where you're going to register, and our Facebook page is where you'll see more and more updates on that as well. As far as how can people help, there are 3 major things that we need. We need people who are willing to advocate at home, people who are willing to just share these stories, to tell their university, to tell their churches, to tell their family, their best friend, whoever it is, to tell them about the needs that we have here and the stories of these children. So advocating is one. Number 2 would be, we need hands-on. We need volunteers. We need people who are willing to come over here and contribute skills. We just had someone who left who did video for us. If you see the conference promo video, someone actually came and volunteered to do that. They're professional news journalists and film workers, and they came over and they contributed that. That was a huge blessing. They're not medical, but they used the talent that they had and creative application to give us something so so great. Not only the promo videos, but also a full-length documentary. If you have a skill, if you sing, if you want to come and sing to these children, if you want to be extra hands to feed them, we have 50 children. Probably 80% of them cannot feed or bathe themselves. So as much as 40 employees sounds like, we're working around the clock, and we have no parents for these children. So we are the only people they have. So being here to physically just contribute yourself and your arms is huge. And then thirdly, it would be sponsorship. We survive completely on well wishes. God has been so gracious. We've had miracle after miracle after miracle. But finding people who love this cause, who care about these children, I see the impact that it has on us, but I also see the impact it has on them. I really want to speak to that, because our sponsors, I really used to beg, and now I just love to tell people how exciting it is to be a part of these children's lives too. Like, I'll drop in and FaceTime or Facebook video call people with their sponsor child sometimes, just surprise them. We're so personal that we're able to connect people and let them have a relationship with these children that they couldn't have anywhere else. And so it is one of the largest things you could do for us, but I also think it's one of the biggest things that we can offer back, because getting to be that integral piece that saves a child's life, I left everything for it, and people have the opportunity to do that at home just by giving. So I think that's the top three.
So sounds like I fit and Janie fits into one of the three criterias. I'll sing. I'll make plans to come visit, God willing, 2019, and bring a team. I think that I've already been in conversations, and there's definitely a lot of interest, Amy, for folks to come see the hospital, be with the children, and lend the support, any way, which way we can, to continue the operations and the miracles that we provide for these kids. So Janie, I'll go ahead and bring you on as you kick off our closing. Amy, I just love your heart and soul, and I'm just very grateful for your existence on this planet.
And I second that, Melanie. I just am and so much awe and of just who you are, and just embody a lot of things that it takes a long time for people to really get some of the lessons that you've shared with us today. So I really want to repeat some of the things that Amy needs, because we want to make sure that we share what you are doing and the things that you need. So we need people to advocate back here in the United States, to share some of the stories that Amy has shared with us and that will share socially, and to get some hands-on volunteers, people that have skills that can come over there, whether it's college students or whether people that they find that this is where their heart and their mission lies, and sponsorship. Those that have the financial means, if you can't be over there to give skills and times, then to please contribute financially to Amy's cause. Amy, there are just so many wisdoms that I've gleaned and that our listeners have gleaned from what you shared. But, I want to share with a line that I believe Melanie and I both really see as a profound statement, if we really hear the words that you had started us off with by sharing what that person, that mentor had shared with you. And that is if that is the life you want to live, why are you not living it? And I just want to share that and end our segment with that quote. But, Amy, we're just so honored and glad to have had you on Life Unscripted. And we also want to thank all of our listeners for tuning into Life Unscripted. And we want to ask you, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. And you can find us on Life Unscripted JM on any of the social media outlets, as well as lifeunscriptedjm@gmail.com. So once again, until next time, this is your host, Janie Lacey.
And this is Melody. Amy, we send you love. We are sending up prayers, and we will be sure to do our part in support of all that you do. Until next week, everyone, please check out ovinternational.org. Signing off.
Bye.